Number 10. YEOMAN America. Back in Avengers Volume 3 Number 2 in January of 1998, Morgan Le Fay's reality distortion wave caused the time period to be altered to a medieval setting which altered the Avengers' clothing, speech patterns, and thought processes. For Steven Rogers, he became YEOMAN America, a knight-like soldier with red, blue, and white stars and stripes armor, and weapons including a sword and a more fantasy-like shield. Now, to be clear, this is just regular 616 Captain America, but magically time displaced, so he's got all of his same abilities, but something about wearing a suit of armor and wielding a sword like that makes him just kind of better than himself? In my opinion, I don't know. Number 9. HYDRA Cap. While this version of Captain America did appear largely in the 616 reality, he's actually technically from an alternate timeline created by a HYDRA brainwashed cubic who used her reality warping powers to make Captain America his ideal self. But since she was being influenced by HYDRA, his ideal self was a Captain America who grew up being made loyal to HYDRA. This Cap would eventually supplant the real Captain America of 616 and would organize the second superhuman civil war, as well as Chitauri invasions on the Earth. He got promoted to director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and influenced the legalization of the S.H.I.E.L.D. Act, which gave S.H.I.E.L.D. way more authority. He used this new power to basically organize a HYDRA takeover of America, with Steve becoming the HYDRA Supreme and bringing on the Secret Empire event. He was defeated by the proper version of Captain America, brought back by Cubic, but this Steve manipulated his way into an extremely high position of power, banishing mutants, imprisoning Inhumans, creating a HYDRA Avengers team, and forcing other heroes into the underground. Number 8. Peggy Carter. If you've seen the Marvel Studios What If show, you know alternate versions of Peggy Carter get the super soldier serum in place of Steven Rogers. Fans love this idea, even if it's strange for a British agent to become Captain America. There are a few different versions of Captain Carter to choose from, but they all generally share the same abilities. There was a version of the character who appeared in Exiles number 3 in 2018 who had a great costume. The one in the Disney Plus show joined the Guardians of the Multiverse, so she was clearly an exceptional version of the character. She's also shown up in a new Marvel Cinematic Universe movie sporting a jetpack, and was able to give the villain of that movie a real good run for their money, while other more powerful characters were like felled instantly. She can be a bit more hot-headed than her Steve Rogers counterpart, sure, but she has the power of fan love, and if you know anything about what that power can do, you know that Peggy Carter as Captain America is very powerful. Number 7. Spider UK. The first Spider-Man mashed with another Marvel hero. These mashups always make for powerful characters. Basically, Spider UK is William Braddock, hailing from Earth 833. If you haven't gathered from the Braddock namesake, Spider UK is what would happen if Spider-Man was a Captain Britain. As such, he is part of the Captain Britain Corps, being introduced in the Edge of Spider-Verse Volume 1. He is also part of the Spider Army put together to take on the Inheritors, and a pretty important part of it, he was not only an amazing leader but also had a very useful dimension hopping ability. Unfortunately, this Spider-Man didn't actually have a spider sense, which is probably what allowed him to be de-lifed by an attack from behind in Spider-Geddon number 1. Number 6. Spider-Man 2099. Probably one of the most loved characters on this list. The Spider-Man of Earth 928, Miguel O'Hara, or as he's better known, Spider-Man of the dystopian future of 2099. This version of Spider-Man has many similar abilities to 616 Peter Parker, but some that are not so similar. He has super speed, which is actually capable of somehow creating a decoy. His spider sense allows him to telepathically communicate with others. He has accelerated vision, he has retractable talons, and also has fangs that he can use to paralyze others. And he has the famously disgusting organic spider silk spinnerets on his wrists. He first appeared as a preview in Amazing Spider-Man number 365 in June of 1992, and in his own series in Spider-Man 2099 number 1 in September 1992, and he is a titanically awesome character.
At number 5 is Beta Ray Bill. This guy is a very aggressive but also very respectable Thor variant. He sort of just butts into Thor's life and takes his title without even so much as a conversation first. It's sort of funny actually. They start as rivals and quickly become friends when they realize they pretty much match each other's power levels almost identically. Basically, Beta Ray Bill is a champion from his own world of Corbin, and when it's tragically destroyed by Searcher, he is forced to go on a pilgrimage to find a new home with a group of his own kind. And guess where they end up? They end up in the Milky Way. But as he's entering Thor's airspace, Thor decides it's kind of his duty to go and check in on the caravan with no intention to do any harm, just to check. But Thor's motivations are totally misunderstood by Beta Ray Bill, and he decides to launch a counterattack, thinking Thor is approaching aggressively. They both fight, and the battle ends with actually a victory for Beta Ray Bill, who then promptly picks up Thor's hammer without issue. This comes as an absolute shock to Thor and everyone else, because this has otherwise been an extremely uncommon occurrence up to this point. Thankfully for Thor, Odin rules that instead of offering Mjolnir to Beta Ray Bill, he would instead craft a whole new weapon for the Corbinite called Stormbreaker. After all this is settled, Beta Ray Bill actually ends up becoming a friend of Thor's and even steps in for the God of Thunder when he's out of town or out of commission. At number 4, we have Old King Thor. This version of the God of Thunder is basically an older, futuristic version of the 616 counterpart we're used to. Hailing from Earth 14412, this version of Thor is the All-Father and ruler of Asgard as we currently know Odin to be. His look is pretty intimidating, having a more advanced and seemingly fortified armor as well as only one eye. The eye is missing because similarly to his father, Odin, he too gave his eye in exchange for all the knowledge in the 9 realms. On top of all that, Old King Thor seems to have refined and perfected all of his abilities, meaning that it could be pretty easily argued that this version of Thor is in fact better than the original. In terms of power levels at least. And I think it's also always helpful for a hero to have more wisdom as well, which we can all safely say Old King Thor has in droves. I mean, just look at him. Although to be fair to Thor 616, it's sort of known that Old King Thor is just an older version of 616 Thor, even though he's from Earth 14412. Now, I'm not sure if Thor developed some ability to travel to other realities, but Old King Thor has suggested a few times before that if 616 Thor were to die, he would too. So there may not be any comparison since they're kind of the same dude. Just one is a lot older and arguably more badass looking. At number 3 is Jane Foster. This version of Thor has one of the most intriguing backstories on the list. Jane Foster is just an average mortal from Earth 616 who basically discovers that she's capable of lifting Mjolnir. The way this happens is that Jane gets a job as a nurse and befriends Thor, who is in his human form, resembling a rather frail doctor named Donald Blake, but eventually he reveals his true identity to Jane as well as confessing his love for her. She then becomes the first mortal that has ever been brought to Asgard, but when she's endowed with Asgardian powers, she becomes overwhelmed by the responsibilities, and so Odin deems her not ready for the task, sending her back to Earth and wiping her memory. But once again, years down the line, she reunites with Donald Blake, aka Thor, and they fall in love once again, but only after a pretty rocky reunion. She's then tragically diagnosed with cancer, the illness that killed her mother when she was only 9 years old. And fast forwarding a bit, Thor is battling on Earth's moon when he realizes that he has lost his ability to wield Mjolnir, and when the hammer begins to call to Jane, she soon learns that she is meant to become the new Thor. The hammer seeks her out telepathically and she travels to find it on the moon. When she successfully lifts it, she transforms into a powerful goddess. Well, she transforms into Thor, and her health immediately increases as well as her physical appearance. She then goes on to be a really powerful and impressive version of Thor and even sacrifices herself at one point for Asgard, but is revived by Odin for her heroism. This is just such a cool and satisfying story of a Thor finding her way, starting as a mortal and becoming one of the most powerful gods in the cosmos. And despite all the bad hands dealt to her by life too. At number 2, we've got Thor-El, which you can maybe guess is basically a combination of Superman and Thor. One interesting thing about this guy off the bat is that he's blue. This is because when the two characters merge, Superman is in his blue energy form, and this merge that I mentioned is referring to the Ultimate Access crossover from the 90s. During this series, Marvel and DC laid down their feud to give fans a really interesting look into a world where Marvel and DC characters have both merged. And what a great combination to see merged into one, Superman and Thor. This is almost an unfair marriage of abilities, which makes probably one of the most powerful Thors on this list, actually arguably the most powerful. That is, if the #1 spot on the list wasn't a thing. I know his accolades might not be the most extensive given the extremely short run of the character. In fact, he only really exists for about half an issue, but I really don't think the character should be written off due to his brevity. This list is about the value of a character in relation to the original Thor we're used to, and just adding Superman to an already powerful and extremely impressive hero, there's no question that this one has a leg up on Thor 616. At number 1, we've got Old Phoenix King Thor, or King Phoenix God of Fire. And if you're already pretty sure what this variant is all about, you're probably right, because the name is pretty self-explanatory. He's Old King Thor, having been overtaken by the Phoenix Force. In 2018's Thor Volume 5 Issue 6, Thor is facing off against Dr. Doom in a distant future, when he also encounters a Phoenix-possessed Wolverine, who is basically a walking, flaming adamantium skeleton at that point. And only when Wolverine reaches to grab Thor's hammer does he basically explode and disappear and pass on the Phoenix Force to Mjolnir, which just leaves Old King Thor and Dr. Doom to face off. But this isn't any ordinary Dr. Doom, it's a Dr. Doom endowed with the powers of the Iron Fist, Starbrand, Doctor Strange, and Ghost Rider all in one. And with the prosperity of Earth on the line, Old King Thor knows that he has to act fast not to end up overpowered by his supercharged Dr. Doom variant. So he makes the bold move of grabbing the hammer and allowing himself to be overtaken by Phoenix Force. With Old King Thor being one of the most powerful versions on the list, this variant instantly becomes hands down the most powerful we've ever seen.
Number 10. Peter Parker of Earth 92100. You'd think the addition of extra arms for a Spider-Man would be an added benefit. When it happened to Peter in the 616 universe, he panicked and got rid of it with the DNA of Morbius. Understandably. But on Earth 92100, Morbius did not live long enough to help Peter, being eaten by sharks of all things. And since no one else could, Peter kinda had to just deal with it. Turns out, during a fight with Doc Ock, after Peter embraced his extra appendages, they actually give him a distinct advantage. They actually grant him much more strength and agility, and using them, he is even able to save Gwen Stacy from her demise. Unfortunately, they don't really protect him from the inheritors. Spider Limbs here sacrifices himself to save Spider-Man 2099 and Lady Spider in Spider-Man 2099 Volume 2 Number 6 in 2014. Number 9. Spider Assassin. Do you know how effective Spider-Man would actually be if he was a little less moral but still a crime fighter? Pretty effective. And while we've seen a few different examples of this, I chose to pull from What If? Spider-Man vs. Wolverine number 1, where we are introduced to Spider Assassin. In his universe, with great power comes great responsibility and greater enemies, which led this Peter of Earth 8351 to leave New York to protect his family. He joined up with Wolverine, and likely because of this friendship, he is much less opposed to sending criminals to the afterlife. He's also almost always serious, not resorting to quips and jokes to cope with situations anymore, which is reflected in his costume, which is a much darker look, especially with those black eyes. I really dig it. His web shooters have also been shown to shoot black webs in some panels, and they also include firearms. He is an effective addition to the Spider Army when it was formed, and an extremely effective Spider-Man indeed. Number 8. Spider's Man. Alright, yeah. Nope, not a fan of this one. You ever seen those videos of people finding spider nests where it's literally a swarm of spiders? Yeah, okay, imagine that, but they're super powered and come together to take on a human form. Now you've got the terrifying Spider's Man, which, side note, that's a great name. In Spider-Geddon number 3 of 2018, we are introduced to a colony of radioactively powered spiders who consumed a high school boy by the name of Peter Parker when he fell into their enclosure at Horizon Labs. After consuming Peter, the spiders gained a sort of hive mind in Peter's image and began fighting crime in Cruel York of Earth 11580. Other than his usual Spider-Man powers and the benefits of being a swarm of spiders, the colony is also able to poison its victims with a bite, or, if they're hungry for power, devour them whole. And it's incredibly hard to actually de-life this guy, as even a single spider being alive means technically Spider's Man is also still alive and can multiply to rebuild itself. Number 7. MCU Captain America. I find it hard to be able to put most of the MCU iterations of characters into a list of most powerful versions of themselves. The MCU tends to depower a lot of their characters, which I suppose is understandable from like a storytelling perspective. But when this version of Cap wields Mjolnir and smacks around Thanos for a little while, nearly beating him all on his own, a feat the Hulk could not even achieve, and then fights the army Thanos brought with him, all with minimal training wielding the power of Thor, it's honestly a sight to behold. I almost wish they showed us Cap going through time fixing all the branched timelines the Avengers had created. It would have been so cool seeing the ways he could use the hammer. Like, imagine Captain America flying through the air with his shield in one hand and being dragged by Mjolnir in the other. It would just be really cool. Number 6. Danielle Cage. On Earth 15061, Danielle Cage, the daughter of both Luke Cage and Jessica Jones, would eventually become the Captain America of her time. And, well, let's just think about this for a second. The subsonic flight and superhuman longevity of her mother with the bulletproof skin of her father, plus the superhuman strength, durability, stamina, speed, and healing factor of both of them? Yes, Danielle Cage doesn't just use the shield of Captain America. She is the shield. She arguably does not even need her shield, which is a controllable drone replica of the original. Unfortunately, we don't get to see much of this version of Danielle Cage, but we know Danielle is a force to be reckoned with, and as such, she is a Captain America who deserves to be on this list. Number 5. Venom 2099. The Earth of Spider-Man 2099 is pretty awesome. Cyberpunk themes, President Doom, a seriously flawed Miguel O'Hara as Spider-Man with that awesome suit. It shouldn't be any surprise that the Venom of 2099 is just as awesome and pretty terrifying. The Venom symbiote in this world has been around for a long time. Like, long enough even to have it evolve to have new abilities. Really cool stuff like acid blood and spit. This version of the symbiote bonded itself to Kron Stone, the son of Tyler Stone and the elder half-brother of Miguel O'Hara. Kind of confusing. The symbiote first appears when it tries to de-life Tyler in the hospital, and that is when Spider-Man intervenes. The fight goes on for a long time, like several issues long, with Venom making Spider-Man choose between his two loves and even de-lifing Spider-Man's former lover, Dana. After Miguel learned of Venom's weakness to sound, sonic sounds were emitted all over the city, stunning Venom and allowing Spider-Man to beat him. Later, the symbiote would merge with Roman the Submariner and flee into the ocean. But this version of the Black Goop really had some power, not to mention some anger issues. He was a true antithesis to Spider-Man, as Venom should be. Number 4. Host Rider. Ooh, wordplay. Well done. And also an extremely cool looking character with a Venom twist. Only it starts to make a little less sense the more you think about it. This Ghost Rider is actually Robbie Reyes, who, if you don't know, isn't actually the spirit of vengeance. He's actually the spirit of his uncle, who seems to have completely taken over his body. And somewhere along the line, we're not told when, the Venom symbiote bonded with them, creating this almost perfect chaotic parasitic being, basically just using the body of Robbie Reyes. Now, like I said, it kind of makes no sense. Ghost Rider is literally hellfire, and symbiotes are weak to fire, but I don't think anyone is really complaining. This guy is brutal. He dispatches S.H.I.E.L.D. agents with ease, and he feeds the Calvin Zabo of his universe to his car. His car eats people! Come on! It is cool and terrifying all at the same time. This Host Rider has an ability called the Penance Kiss, which is very much like the Penance Stare, only with the mouth, determining people's guilt or innocence and then pretty much consuming their soul. I can't help but imagine what his voice sounds like. It's probably really cool. He's brutal, he's ruthless, he looks amazing, he's covered in fire, and they are Host Rider. Number 3. May Parker Venom. Earth X. Earth 999, a world where basically every single person has powers, except things have gone apocalyptic, and where the daughter of Peter Parker, May Parker, is Venom. While her retired and cynical pops ain't too thrilled about it, she does actually have complete control over the symbiote thanks to her advanced and honed spider sense. She was eventually under the control of this kid, going by the Red Skull name, and thanks to her father and other Earth X classic heroes, was saved. With Venom and her father Spider-Man going on to join the super-powered police force and fight crime and supervillain threats together. She eventually, after the death of of, well, death, was recruited by Kang the Conqueror as a multiversal team to fight the Apocalypse Twins. In addition to her proportional spider powers, plus the enhanced spider sense, she gains all the usual symbiote powers, plus a few extra, like what seems to be a rudimentary form of telepathy. And 'tis believed her symbiote could go on to mutate further to gain more powers, which is a good way for Marvel to say, we can do whatever we want with this. She is definitely one of the cooler incarnations of Venom, as are most characters on the Earth X world. Not of Venom, of their own perspective characters. You know what I meant. Number 2, Barbarian Venom. Okay, he's not a barbarian really, but in the War of the Realms, Eddie no longer has the symbiote Venom. He fights as best as he can against the Dark Elves on his own. A War Witch sees his awesomeness and bestows a Dreamstone to him that will give him anything he wants. Now, using this Dreamstone, he is imbued with all the powers of the Venom symbiote, but just quite a bit stronger and with Eddie's complete control, but feeding on his rage, which he shows us when he completely cuts off the arm of the really powerful War Witch and takes on a full force of giants and ogres and trolls and dark elves and a whole bunch of other stuff. But then he faces off against Jack-O-Lantern, also boosted up by another Dreamstone. While this fire-based villain would be a problem for Venom, Eddie gets this stone-looking armor stuff. And this is where we get the Viking barbarian looking Venom. Because he literally looks like a barbarian with a crazy horned helmet with a big axe with all these runes, and he's just so badass. He completely unlocks the seemingly unlimited amount of power from this Dreamstone, just going to town, and he even bonds the symbiote to civilians who join in the fight against the Dark Elves. Eddie literally calls down lightning on Jack-O-Lantern. He's wild. And eventually, this Dreamstone symbiote thing corrupts him a little bit, and he gives it up, but damn, I love this story. Check it out. Number 1, Gwenom. Ooh, more wordplay. Even nicer. But she hasn't just got wordplay on her side. No, Spider-Gwen of Earth 65, or Ghost Spider, which is way better, has easily one of the best costumes of all the Spider heroes. Throw in a healthy dash of a symbiotic monster from outer space, notorious for giving great fashion advice, and, well, look at her. She's absolutely amazing. On top of that, Gwen sort of relies on Venom for her powers, since her original powers started to fade. But while that sounds bad, Gwen has actually learned to find a very healthy balance with her symbiote. The symbiote itself enhances whatever emotions the host has, right? So when she first bonded with Venom, thanks to a corrupt Matt Murdock Kingpin, who she was forced to team up with, she was rage-fueled and looking for revenge against the Rhino for attacking her father, and eventually against Murdock himself. But over time, she realized that she needed to control that and give Venom better qualities to enhance, in order to control and find balance with the symbiote. In a way, Venom actually helped her to become a better hero, all while still retaining that really, really sweet suit. Mwah! Chef's kiss, Gabella. Mwah! Number 10. Multiple Man Venom. In the Old Man Logan story, we get a very awesome, if not short-lived look at the Tyrannosaurus Rex that was host to the Venom symbiote. Now, while that is an awesome idea, we learn nothing further about this Venom variant until Old Man Hawkeye, the prequel. In this story, we see a Venom who bonds to the Madrox gang, who have kind of separated from James Madrox. After Venom bonded to the Madrox, they now use their power to duplicate themselves into an army of Venoms, vowing to track down Hawkeye, who had stuck the other Madrox members with plenty of arrows. An army of Venoms chasing you across the country would be terrifying. Luckily, with the help of his friends, Hawkeye is able to trick the symbiote into reducing its number to chase him into the forest, where he bonds with said T-Rex. And now we've come full circle. Number 9. Venom Pool. I'm not talking about the What If Jerry Curl Venom, Deadpool, although he's awesome, and I'm not talking about the Back in Black Deadpool. No. We're talking about the Edge of Venomverse one-shot. In this world, there is a sentient tapeworm discovered by scientists that is being turned into a weapon by said scientists. Scientists, man. They never learn. Deadpool stumbles upon a lab where these tapeworms have taken over the bodies of the scientists here, and they begin to attack Deadpool. Now, lucky for him, there's just a Venom symbiote in a jar, and he breaks and bonds with it. and uses it to absolutely annihilate the tapeworms. He honestly ends up looking really cool, much more armored and alien looking than he did before, which I think there are a lot of allusions to the movie Alien in this comic, but I digress. Venom Pool basically goes around battling these tapeworms, helping delivering mothers and making balloon tapeworm animals for their kids. And he's killing it, until he's snatched away by Captain America Venom, taking him to join the Venomverse team. Number 8. Kingpin Venom. In the alternate Earth TRN 421, we pick up in the year 2061, and Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, has ended the mortal existence of Eddie Brock and taken the Venom symbiote as his own, bonding into this monstrous, massive, fat guy Venom, which is really intimidating already. But what we learn is that Kingpin has modified the symbiote to be able to travel through technology, kind of like how the ultimate version of Iron Man can, but way quicker, way cooler, and way more terrifying. King Venompin, as I'm gonna call him, can basically travel through electricity and the internet. He is seen controlling cars, helicopters, and even electronic billboards, all to pursue Peter Parker's Spider-Man, who has to literally run away because he cannot take on this guy. In the end, Peter had to flee into the woods, where King Venom followed. This part of the fight didn't last very long though, with Peter using the fire from a torch to detach the symbiote from Kingpin, saving the day rather annoyingly. This guy is definitely way too cool to be defeated, but you know, whatever.
At number 7 is Thor, Herald of Galactus. This one doesn't need much explanation for those who already know the role of the Herald of Galactus, but basically Galactus is this enormous cosmic being that has an insatiable hunger for planets. So he goes around consuming them with absolutely zero remorse. But even a being as gigantic and powerful as Galactus needs some help to get his destructive work done. So he always has someone called a Herald that helps guide him through the cosmos and find the next planets for him to consume. In exchange, the Heralds are granted ownership over the power cosmic, which basically gives them a fraction of Galactus' power, which even a fraction is a ton if you know Galactus. With the power cosmic, the Herald is then able to travel at immeasurable speeds through the cosmos and harness almost limitless power in order to fulfill their duties. And at one point, Thor is chosen as the next Herald. His costume changes to something much darker and even cooler in some ways, and also if you imagine Thor's powers paired with the effects of the aforementioned power cosmic, then you can also imagine why this variant deserved a spot on this list in terms of power as well. At number 6 is Iron Hammer. This is such a cool variant because he answers the question, what would happen if Thor and Iron Man combined their abilities into one hero? When Gamora manipulates the souls of the Marvel Universe and mixes them all together, she ends up creating a whole new world called Warp World. Sounds kind of fun, doesn't it? Sounds like the name of a crappy small town arcade, and we all know those are always the best ones. But it is far from that. It's actually a universe where every soul is combined with another within the Marvel Universe. This event basically creates a mixture of Thor and Iron Man, aka Stark Odinson, son of Howard Odin. Riveting bit of writing right there. Basically, this variant ends up with a pretty cool new look as well as a brand new set of capabilities that basically combine Iron Man's wit and intelligence with Thor's supreme godlike power. I mean, even if this was just Iron Man wielding Mjolnir, it would be cool enough, but part of Thor is still in there somewhere, which makes it even more insane to imagine how powerful this variant could be.
Number 5. The Spider of Earth 15. There are a lot of characters who go by the Spider, but specifically, I'm talking about the one that's bonded with the Carnage symbiote who comes from Earth 15. The Spider of Earth 15 is a much more sadistic, sociopathic, red-headed version of Peter Parker, which is proven by the fact that he has been sentenced to a total of 67 life sentences in prison for the crimes he has committed. To make him just a bit more lovable, he has a sense of humor very much like that of Deadpool. The Spider was introduced in Exiles number 12 and was a big part of the reality-conquering Weapons X team featured in it, being a sometimes leader of that team. As a Carnage-bonded sociopath, he was pretty powerful, but he was nonetheless sent to the afterlife by a blast from Firestar in Exiles number 44. Number 4. Poison. From one symbiote to another. Every time that pesky Venom symbiote would try to merge with Peter Parker, he would only get halfway before Peter could repel him. Now, what happens if Peter Parker is defeated by Venom, who completely bonds with him? In the What If Spider-Man the Other story, after Peter is defeated by Morlun and cocoons himself under Brooklyn Bridge, he is offered the chance to be resurrected by the Spider God. But instead of allowing this, he refuses and is ejected from his cocoon, non-resurrected. Cut to Venom, who, being Spider-Man's crazy ex-girlfriend, senses what is happening and completely ditches his current host. He intercepts Peter's body and after months of struggling, fully bonds to Peter. Now, Peter has all the fully realized powers that come with being a symbiote, but he actually has stingers that are capable of piercing the skin of Luke Cage, which is pretty insane. Number 3, Spider-Hulk. The second Spider amalgam here. Spider-Man of the Immortal Hulk with Great Powers story is granted the alter ego of the Hulk after Loki magically transferred the Gamma power to him. So it's Spider-Man's relative spider powers mixed with an unstoppable green monstrosity with the temperament of a toddler. It's actually really cool. Eventually, the power of the Hulk is switched back to Banner with the help of the Fantastic Four and Banner's own genius. It's a short little story that seems almost self-contained, but it's an insanely cool one, and a Spider-Hulk would be an incredibly powerful character if he were to show up again and had more time to hone his abilities and temper tantrums. Number 2, Ghost Spider. The last Spider-Man mashup with other heroes, but nonetheless possibly one of the most powerful potential mashups. Also, in my opinion, the coolest looking one. Also, it appears that Uncle Ben leaving this plane of existence is actually a really good thing. See, on Earth 11638, Ben never loses his life to a mugger, and he helps train Peter with his powers and helping him form Parker Industries. Peter and Uncle Ben end up building a machine that allows Peter to lure alternate versions of Spider-Man to this reality where he absorbs their powers to increase his own. That kinda took a dark turn, didn't it? But when he tried to do this to the apparently most powerful Spider-Man from Earth 616, he is de-lifed and his soul is sent to hell, where, with the assistance of the Infernal Hulk, he is fused with the spirit of vengeance, becoming the Ghost Spider. If you know anything about Ghost Rider, you know how actually insanely powerful he is, even going toe-to-toe with Galactus at one point. So yeah, this Spider-Man / Ghost Rider guy is potentially extremely powerful. Number 1. Cosmic Spider-Man. There was a point in time when Peter Parker of Earth 616 absorbed the Enigma Force and became the most powerful version of Spider-Man we have ever seen, even capable of punching the Hulk into orbit. In the mainline continuity, he doesn't have it for very long, but on Earth 13, he kept the powers and became the hero Captain Universe. So, this Peter Parker has all the usual Spider-Man powers, but also now has cosmic awareness where he can sense things on a subatomic level and from crazy distances. He has energy manipulation, giving him energy blast and flight. He also used his abilities to manipulate matter, making his webs as strong as adamantium, or even changing their shape altogether. His universe became a safe haven for all the Spider-Men when the Inheritors were hunting them, because Captain Universe could defeat them, and his cosmic powers are gone when he leaves that dimension. Unfortunately, he is consumed by Solus, who used the life force basis of his powers against him in Amazing Spider-Man number 11 in 2014. He's still cool though.
At number 10 we have Throg. This guy deserves a spot on the list, mainly for the meme, but also because it's one of the iterations of Thor that doesn't take itself too seriously. For those who don't already know, this is obviously a trick played by Loki to humiliate his brother Thor. In Thor number 365, Throg makes his first appearance when Loki decides he wants to get a laugh out of his otherwise very serious and stoic brother. But this isn't the last time we see him. In an issue of What If that plays out if the X-Men stayed on Asgard, a Thorified version of Storm faces off against Throg for the glory of Asgard, which is pretty bonkers. I mean, you know how what ifs can be, right? It's definitely a bizarre moment that's probably meant for a laugh more than anything else. But believe it or not, this still isn't the last time Throg makes an appearance. We see him yet again in Lockjaw and the Pet Avengers number 1 in 2009 alongside other animal versions of the Avengers. I guess readers just couldn't get enough of the little guy. He must have been rated pretty well because he just keeps coming back. He's funny looking. At number 9 we have Ultimate Thor. Being a pretty controversial set of comics, the Ultimate series sets the stage for some fun new characters, as uncanny and overly dark as they can sometimes be. But Thor's variant in the series is anything but a miss. Originally dismissed by his teammates on the Ultimates as being crazy, this version of Thor unusually feels the need to prove himself to them in order to gain their trust and respect as the God of Thunder. He's got almost the same powers as the Earth 616 Thor, but he's rocking a different look That's pretty cool, and also a magical belt that he wears which seems to give him a boost of power. He also holds an axe instead of a hammer, which I just think is a pretty cool touch to have him stand out from his 616 counterpart. At number 8 we've got Thor 2099, where this world's Thor is actually a priest named Cecil McAdams, who is part of a religion devoted solely to the original Thor, who had lived 100 years before by this point. What's bizarre about this character is that he doesn't actually come by Thor's powers naturally. His abilities are granted to him by the CEO of the Alchemax Corporation, who has convinced him that he's a Norse god. It's actually a pretty dark reality playing out during the series, with most of the world being run by corporations and greedy multimillionaires. And on top of all that, genuine superheroes are pretty scarce during these times, unless they're created synthetically like McAdams is. Although it sounds like I'm basically just outing this guy as a fraud, he still means entirely well, and he's passionate about Norse mythology. What I find really cool about this character is that he's become a superhero through passion and obsession with the real Thor, which sort of turns him into a pretty genuinely powerful and motivated variant, especially since he fully believes he's the real deal.
Number 7. Spider-Man reign. 35 years have passed. Spider-Man is an old, retired man. Mary Jane Watson has passed away. New York is under the control of dictator Mayor Waters and his police force called Reign. But unbeknownst to most, it was Venom who had been pulling the strings, taking the position of aide to the mayor in the body of Edward Sachs. This version of Venom is much more brooding, maniacal, and downright dastardly than his mainline counterpart, plotting, scheming for the eventual return of his rival. He's a bitter old symbiote since Spider-Man retired, feeling abandoned by the hero and cannot wait to get his hands back on him. He has replicated himself thousands of times, put together the Sinister Six, and has trapped the citizens of New York in the city with his security system known as Webb, that's W-E-B-B. All that, and he is still defeated by the end of the comic. Shame. Number 6. Agent Venom. Flash Thompson, the bully to Peter Parker and unknowingly his high school #1 fan. After he goes off to the army and loses both of his legs, he joins up with a secret government program, Project Rebirth 2.0, that sees him bond with the Venom symbiote to become Agent Venom, a symbiote super soldier who set off on his own as a hero, joining the Secret Avengers, the Guardians of the Galaxy, Thunderbolts, and fighting in lots and lots of stories before he lost the symbiote and eventually became Agent Anti-Venom. With the symbiote, Flash gets the superhero starter pack of powers, plus those awarded to hosts of symbiotes. So that's wall crawling, web generation, spider sense, plus invulnerability to spider sense, invisibility, symbiote tendrils, and shapeshifting, and hive mind, and all that extra good stuff. But being a soldier, he is also extremely adept with weapons. He's an awesome fan favorite character just like the original Venom, giving him a whole ton of the power of popularity. Number 5. Earth X. If you haven't read Earth X, well, do it. But the basic premise is that in this alternate reality, the people of the Earth all begin to gain mutant abilities. And in the words of Syndrome from The Incredibles, and when everyone's super, no one will be. Captain America specifically was a bit more tragic in this story. For starters, he felt unworthy as he had actually separated the Red Skull from his head using his shield in an act of vengeance, causing him to step down from the Avengers out of shame. But this likely led to all the Avengers except Vision being defeated by Absorbing Man. So this Cap was a faded version of what he could have been, but he still had all the same powers and abilities and still fought against what was wrong and stood for what was right. But it's when he passed on that he actually became more powerful. Cap turned into one of Mar-Vel's avenging hosts, which were basically angels in the realm of the dead. His wings enabled him to fly. He could change his shape, but usually looked like himself. He was able to travel between the dimensions of the land of the dead to paradise, and from paradise to the antimatter sun of the negative zone. On top of that, Cap could also awaken the latent memories of those in the realm of the dead with a single touch. He also wielded an extremely cool sword, but we don't know what its capabilities really are because he never used it. He is a much different Captain America with an extremely unique set of powers and abilities, but he's also one of the coolest. Number 4. Kiyoshi Morales. When a group of 5 Captain Americas from different realities are brought together, we're gonna look at 2 who have not been seen before. But the one I want to talk about here is Kiyoshi Morales. the great-grandnephew of Luke Cage, and he is the 25th century's Commander A. Kiyoshi is a much more physically imposing character, standing at what looks like almost 7 feet tall, and he was definitely the biggest among the Captain Americas gathered by Toth Key in Captain America Corps No. 1 from 2011. Instead of a vibranium shield, Kiyoshi's suit can generate energy shields on each arm, which resemble the normal Captain America vibranium shield. His suit is much more advanced as well, as you'd expect from the 25th century Captain America stand-in. For example, it features a neuro web, which allows him to tap into the wireless systems and stored information of the world. He had all the enhancements we'd expect, and he is just a super cool character who I really hope we get to see in the future. But for now, he is definitely my favorite of the members of the Captain America Corps. Number 3, Ultimate Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, it seems that Captain America's treatment with the Super Soldier Serum actually seemed to give him a bit more of an edge in terms of his powers. For example, while this universe's Hulk is a bit weaker than the 616 version, he is still incredibly strong. But this Captain America was able to go toe-to-toe for a few rounds against the Hulk, almost actually defeating him and eventually knocking him out, which is like 616 Cap could never do that. Ultimate Cap also seemed pretty capable of handling armies of guys all on his own. He was an extremely capable leader while also being a bit more than a little ruthless compared to his 616 counterpart. Like when he was fighting against the Chitauri Herr Kleiser, his rival. He resorted to traumatizing Bruce Banner to get him to turn into the Hulk and then convincing him that Kleiser was getting it on with Betty Ross so that Hulk would pummel Kleiser into the concrete and then eat him. That kind of wholesome stuff. Nice. Number 2, Soldier Supreme. A cap-wielding Mjolnir? Cool. But how about a Cap with the mystical and magical powers of the Sorcerer Supreme? Well, we get that in Infinity Warps, when Gamora, wielding the Infinity Gauntlet, basically folds reality in half, merging characters with other characters. One of the two merged together, in case you didn't catch on, is Captain America Steve Rogers and the Sorcerer Supreme, Dr. Stephen Strange. The result would be Stephen, with a PH, Rogers, the Soldier Supreme. He fought in World War II against the German Hell Priest Dormammu Red, and would use his super enhancements and military training alongside his mystical and magical abilities. During World War II, he teamed up with his Howling Commandos of Hoggoth, including Dum Dum Fury and Bucky Wong. Later, in the modern era, after returning from banishment in the Negative Zone, he would team up with Iron Hammer, Arachnite, and Weapon Hex to battle against Devondra. Number 1, Super Soldier. Seems like when you take one character and smush him together with another character, you get a pretty OP new character, like Soldier Supreme, or Cap-wielding Mjolnir, or even Danielle Cage to a degree. But what if you took Captain America and you fused him together with one of the strongest characters in all of comic books? Well, in the Amalgam universe where Marvel characters are mixed in with DC Comics characters, we got Super Soldier. And if you haven't guessed by now, this is Captain America mixed together with Superman. When Clark Kent volunteered for the Super Soldier program, he was injected with a Super Soldier serum containing cellular kryptonite samples from an alien, while also being doused in solar radiation. The result was a power set unheard of for any other Captain America. Super strength over 1 million tons. Invulnerability to everything but Green K, as it's called. Superhuman stamina to the point of being completely tireless. He can fly at speeds of around Mach 10. He has superhuman speed at speeds of about 2,000 miles per second. He can hear and smell anything on Earth. He has a sonic scream that allows Clark to destroy someone's literal essence. No need to eat or sleep. He can heal instantly from most any injury due to his altered metabolism. Clark can create hurricane-level winds by blowing and can also chill his breath to project ice from his mouth. And he has extremely hot heat vision. I think yeah, that pretty much covers it, and I don't really need to say more. But you take all that and put it in the mind of an expert tactician and soldier, it's game over for you, buddy. Sorry.